Thank you for taking some time for yourself. And you can choose to get more comfortable now, or to be just as you are. Take a deep breath in. Close your eye and sink into that wonderful heavy feeling. Chest expanding, sinking. The light noises outside. The back of your legs on the chair, supporting you into this experience. And as you breathe, your shoulders rising, falling their way into relaxation. And I'm curious if you can get more lethargic. Really allow yourself to do absolutely nothing. Perfect. And the truth is, I never really know if clients are able to give themselves an exceptional experience. Deep breath in and a relaxing breath out. Existing in existence. And it's so unimportant how you are relaxing. You can just be here in existence. Because I really don't know the last time you got to leave life's baloney out there, to be here. Thank you for being here. And I don't know if your skin is more relaxed than your lymphatic system. More relaxed than your respiratory system. The bones in your toe more at ease than the bones in your vertebrae. The air inside of you is expanding more than the air on the outside of you. The energy in your body more heavy than the energy outside your body. Or if it's the same. But what I do know is your blood cells inside your body are just floating around, ingesting bacteria and other particles, cleaning up cellular debris, just loving going about their day, loving their life inside you. And in the past, you've been feeling depressed. That's how special you are. Thank you for being here. And in the past, you've been feeling depressed, or maybe down and out, or something else. And anyone in your situation will completely understand. But the good news is it's got nothing to do with you. There's a process to it. Most recently, the World Health Organization suggested depression has doubled in the United States and Australia, or even tripled. Maybe you already know. In the first year of COVID, it increased by a factor of 25% due to disruption, lost jobs, parents who could no longer afford daycare, the fears people had about infection, or lost a loved one, or those that had a need for affinity, but they simply couldn't be alone and would sneak out during lockdowns to party. And then there were those that just loved the isolation. How all of these people made all different decisions. What that says about a person. And maybe you remember a time when you were very small, your strategy for making decisions was that's the biggest meal, the biggest toy, the biggest chocolate bar. Or maybe you liked everything pink or blue. Or you wanted everything your best friend had or relatives had. The comfort of thinking with a child's brain. How easy life was, responding to simple feeling. That's pink. That's blue. That's the smaller. And that's the bigger. And in a moment, I'm going to share with you a few stories. And at first, you might be thinking, why am I sharing with you these stories? Your subconscious mind will be listening and do something wonderful for you a little later on. And everyone knew in Simon Sharma's book, The Face of Britain, what a real painter was like. You just had to look at the night. Sir Peter Paul Rubens, Sir Anthony Van Dyck, cavaliers with libraries. They sat high in saddle, and some they were nonchalant and expressively passionate, all at the same time. They were versed in many ways that were written on the face. Horror and pathos, lust and guile was their mood music. They knew just how to make someone well up at the sight of their blue gowns of sorrow. Their silks and satins were waterfalls, the women who wore them opulently formed, and they were known as the princes of art. And like popes and kings, receiving admirers, they were at ease in the comfort of sovereigns, and trod the line of non-formality and presumption with precision. But who now would be the sergeant painter to the king? And the fire of London in 1666 made great work for artists. And at the time, the whole idea behind the monarchy was to remove them from common thought, the needs to translate the king and future king as little gods on earth, accountable to no one except the Almighty Himself. And for that purpose, the great Baroque flying machines of ceiling gods, the imperial horses of Van Dyck, were perfect. But now, after the trauma of the interregnum, when Charles I was executed, to now Charles II, something else was needed. And his return to the throne was a deep yearning by the country. Genuinely joyful crowd welcomed his return. And who better to do this than Isaac Fuller with his rough, common brushstroke? And it reminds me of when Sean Fanning, at his peak, and you can read about it in the book, All the Rage, the undisclosed betrayal, dissension of Napster, made the lawsuit of the record company look like a friendly game of chess, allowing over 70 million users to take control away from the industry giant through the illegal downloads of music. But it also illustrates the power he had. But Napster wasn't selling pet food or baby products. It was the fastest growing business of all time. The leaders of Hollywood and Silicon Valley were wondering if anti-copying regulation would be mandated across all computers. But it was the late 1990s. It was a party out of control. Napster founder Sean Fanning was feeling good in the limo. On the way to the party, he had just dropped a tab of ecstasy for a Halloween rave. And now he was in a pleasant cocoon. He was drinking water, trying not to grind his teeth. And in the haze of that evening, it really didn't matter that no one had heard of Napster, or the new chief executive was on ecstasy too. Sean said it was stupid, but it was also a lot of fun. They had ridden the internet explosion into parties and easy money. But the issue was, billionaire venture capitalists were still willing to put millions and millions of dollars into something that was already illegal. By 2001, a few short years later, Dr. Dre and Metallica sued Napster, and it was shut down by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in a separate lawsuit from several major record labels. By 2002, Napster filed for bankruptcy. And it reminds me of the book Memoirs of a Navy SEAL. Lock and load is a command used on all US military firing ranges. It literally means get ready to fire. But lock and load is more than that. It's a mindset. It is the realization that you have to go into combat at a moment's notice. They stay ready. They stay locked and loaded. And for SEALs, combat comes in many forms at any time. Often when no other US forces are committed. Lock and load mindset starts when a SEAL steps across the line of a basic training facility. The SEALs stay locked and loaded as long as they are in a SEAL team. They train for combat under as realistic conditions as possible. And it was February 66, and Captain Robert Gormley had just finished briefing his men for the mission. USS Sea Lion was a vintage fleet submarine that had been converted for swimmer operation. It was gliding through the water at 6 knots, 30 feet below the surface, manoeuvring to its launch point. He looked around the room at the Water Demolition Team 22, dressed in black, diving wetsuits. On one leg, they had a diving knife. None of them had firing arms. They wouldn't need them on this mission. If they had to shoot someone, the mission would fail. The forward escape trunk, which they were exiting the submarine, was barely big enough to handle a pair of swimmers and a trunk operator. The forward torpedo room was designed to fit 6 men who loaded the torpedoes into the 4 tubes. They filled the space and then some. Sweat was dripping off his wetsuit that would keep him warm in the water, but now they were about to dehydrate them. The trunk operator was already standing by in the chamber. The submarine dive supervisor was standing by, waiting to receive word from the submarine commanding officer. He was at the bottom of the ladder, knowing what to do. His swim buddy, petty officer, second class, stood beside him, checking to see if all men were ready to go. He knew they were ready. He could see it in their eye. His men were all aggressive, warrior. They were all well prepared for the mission. Adrenaline was high, confidence even higher. All they wanted to do was get off the damn submarine before they sweated to death. And suddenly the Sea Lion slowed to 3 knots. They were ready to start. They started to squeeze through the escape trunk to begin the lock and load cycle, ready to commence lockout. And through the speaker, Captain Robert A. Gormley could hear commence lock, then undogging door side, an opening flap, opening vent. He could hear the rush of the water, the sound of escaping air. He could see through the small window as seawater filled the trunk. Water at waist level, swimmers okay. Roger, responded the dive supervisor. Water at the chest level, closing vent side door opening. Swimmers leaving the trunk. And he watched his swimmers escape the tight trunk into the freedom of the night ocean. And it was after 2 a.m, after dark. The entire cycle took 9 minutes, and that was a good time, but not a great time. 118 minutes later, it was Gormley's turn. It was a tight fit at 6 feet and 1 inch, weighing 205 pounds. Together, they more than filled the escape trunk, their diving gear clunking against the trunk. They had to be careful to not snare one of their canvas breathing bags or breathing hoses. The rig they were wearing was fragile, and as the water rose, the calmer he felt, taking the weight away from the gear he carried. And when he escaped and swam along the deck, his men had his equipment. He was ready to launch at precisely 0400. Course to Point Alpha, same as planned. Roger, see you in about 5 hours. The lead pair set a course towards the beach. His best navigators were the lead pair, knowing they would guide them to the lead target beach. They swam in double file, Tom by his side. The trip to Point Alpha was going to take about 1.5 hours. Long swims like this, it was hard not to keep falling into a light trance. Swimming always relaxed him. They were on their way to an enemy beach, a small island in the Caribbean. They had to reconvene at the beach without being seen, which meant they had to stay underwater and prepare it for a large naval force. A submerged swimmer, reconnaissance was the most complicated mission Gormley had ever run as a SEAL officer, and it took more than 3 hours to conduct the mission briefing. Once they got there, they couldn't talk things over. All communication had to be done with sign language. And they had to know not only their own assignment, but everyone else's if they had casualties. Today's mission was straightforward. They had to give amphibious force commander of every man-made and natural obstacle that might impale a landing craft. The commanding officer needed to know if the beach could support tanks, bulldozers and other heavy equipment in the landing fort, and they had to do it all without the enemy knowing they had been there. They had to leave the submarine about 2 miles away. They would record the water depth and any man-made or natural obstacle. They would swim back to sea, to the submarine, and at night, and none of them wanted to face the commanding officer, Dave Chappell, if they blew it. It was 0530 when he looked at his watch. It looked like the right place. Gently allowed his face mask to break the surface. He scanned the beach and saw no enemy activity. Maybe they were still asleep. The swimmers laid out their 500-yard baseline. The swimmer reel was marked every 50 yards, so they would swim a series of 50-yard intervals to get to the right location. The information was critical, but so was not getting caught. And they noted an obstacle to prevent a naval landing, and another, and 2 more, and a coral reef. And one of the hardest things was not knowing how any of his men were doing. And on this dive they were using an oxygen-nitrogen mix, but the rigs were old. They needed to prevent carbon buildup and toxicity seizures. Today they started to return when suddenly Gormley inhaled water and tasted barrel line. Had his rig flooded out, and he refused to resurface. He swallowed the water and barrel line. He was getting a little bit of water on the inhale of his breathing. It was uncomfortable, but he could deal with that. He decided to go on with the mission, and his buddy would pay more attention to him. His situation got worse. He started inhaling more and more barrel line. Incredibly, no one had to abort yet. He figured out how to swim slightly to the right so he could breathe in more gas. He slowed his team down, but they swam on. He wasn't feeling any of the symptoms of carbon buildup, but it was only a matter of time. Finally, the lizard line stopped as they waited for their submarine. They had been in the water for over 5 hours. He looked at his watch. 09:10. His buddy signalled for him to go into the submarine first. And he said no. For the first time, he was breathing normal air. He had a headache but felt fine. He stayed under the bubble. It was their time to descend. He breathed in his rig, and this time it was full of water. He decided to free dive. So he and his buddy argued underwater for a while. He checked his watch, 10:45 when he returned to the ladder, and there was Dave, and he looked pissed. And he was angry at Lieutenant Gormley. He had fists the size of manholes. He said, "Let me help you break down your rig." He replied, "No thanks, I'd rather do it myself." And as he watched Dave undo his rig, he heard him say, "What in the hell do you think you are doing out there with this rig, in this condition?" "The job," Gormley replied. "Bullshit. This was only a training mission." And isn't it interesting how people make different decisions? The princes of the arts, Napster, Lieutenant Gormley, and how wonderful it feels that you decided to spend some quality time for yourself, some time for self-care. Thank you for being here. And out of all the wonderful decisions you have made today, and I don't know if you were grateful for someone that held the door open for you, or someone let you in a busy traffic lane on the highway, or that you didn't have to buy petrol today. And as you continue to be grateful for taking some quality time for yourself right now, you have just slowed down your blood pressure, heart rate, without me asking that of you. That's how special you are. And every time you have chosen to go for a walk around the block, down the road, a bit of exercise, being grateful, or keep a gratitude journal of 2 or 3 different things you're grateful for each day, not only have you lowered your risk of cardiovascular disease, you have lowered your risk of depression, little by little, moment by moment. And I'm not sure you're aware how special you are. Only 25% of people seek out help for depression. So you are already doing great. Thank you for being here. And the reason why people don't seek out treatment plans from psychotherapists or doctors is due to something known as negative expectancy. They expect it might not work. And a moment ago, I don't know if you got curious about how you focus. By taking some quality time for yourself. That's right, you have just decreased your risk of negative expectancy and improved your outlook for the future. While the rest of the world is checking their mobile phone every 12 minutes, you have just gotten ahead of the game going without for a little while, because most people know not to smoke, or at least understand the risks or long-term impact of smoking. But with time on social media, known as TSSM, no one has questioned the long-term impact. All people see is all the happy, smiling people comparing themselves to who is better than who. But you have just created 1,500 biochemical changes that promote growth, restoration, and health, eliminated negative emotions like anger, stress, and competition. That's how special you are. And isn't it interesting how we make decisions over time? From that's pink, that's blue, that's small, that's big, because a wise man once said, the future hasn't happened yet. It's still wide open for you to create a future for yourself. And I wonder in the future just how you will tweak your strategy and how you go about thinking, doing, or responding to feeling. And unlike a spotlight where you can choose to step into the light or step into the darkness, put objects in the light, change the amount of spotlight. Which reminds me of the lyric, I think they are, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And I wonder what you might choose to shed your light on. And I don't know if it will be a tiny spotlight or a large, unmissable giant circle of light. And it's totally fine and okay if they need to be glow sticks before they shine, amplifying your strengths, the small or large steps, action, rituals you might take from feeling better to being better, to being better and feeling better, little by little, moment by moment. And isn't it wonderful to know 10 years into the future how grateful you were? Because you just never know whose gratitude journal you just might end up in one day. Thank you for being here. And when you're ready to reorient yourself back to your external world, you can stretch out, wriggle your fingers and toes, open your eye. Welcome back. You're perfect, just as you are.